shall we start? Let's try again. Shall we start? Yeah. Ah, okay. Just checking. I know you guys are after lunch. That's why I was double checking. Thank you for being here. I understand that this is a technical conference, and I don't do technical stuff anymore. I've been writing a lot of code for many years, but for the last 10, 12 years, I've been focusing on people rather than computers. So my life was too simple when I was doing technology. So I decided to do something more challenging. And so what I do today is I work as you can see, as an Agile enterprise coach, whatever that means. It's just, like the word of the moment. That means that I usually go into organizations and I try to suggest ways that they can improve the way they cooperate, the way they work, the way they do business. Try to make them a little bit more adaptive and more reactive. Little bit more fit for the 21st century. That's what I like to think sometimes. So in this talk, and actually I want to double thank you for being here, not only because this is a technical conference and this is not a technical talk, but also because the title is totally incomprehensible. So thank you for your trust or your curiosity. I don't know what it is. But anyway, or maybe you just wanted a quiet room to take a nap, which is also fine. In that case, please just do not snore. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about in this talk is something, well, I'd like to share a little bit of storytelling, things that I have seen with some of my clients, a little bit of science, a little bit of philosophy as well, and practical advice. So this is what I'd like to share with you. And let's start with something very, very simple. Are you guys familiar with this person, this guy here? Maybe yes. Maybe you are too young. Anyway, there was a very famous movie, like comedy. It's called National Lampoon's Animal House. And as you can see, the actor is John Belushi. I hope that at least you remember John Belushi. And Thomas does. And it's a very funny movie. It's a very funny character. So the name of the character in the movie is Bluto. And Bluto is always a little bit over the top. It's a little bit too much all the time. So he's like a party animal, and he likes to have fun and so on. So yes, he likes to have fun at parties, toga parties more specifically. He has some tendencies. Like for instance, he tends sometimes to eat a little bit too much, as you can probably see. And also he has a tendency of drinking a little bit too much, at least from my standards. But he's a funny character. Okay, it's very, very entertaining. A little bit over the top. So he has this attitude, this character. Now I want to use Bluto as a metaphor, and the metaphor is, now let's assume that Bluto is an organization, or maybe it's just a team or a small company, or a big company, and somebody calls you in and they ask you, well, listen, can you please transform this guy? Can you make this guy healthier and leaner and fitter and more agile, for instance? Okay. So can you please do an agile transformation on this guy and change this guy, make it so much better, make this guy so much better? I don't know about you guys, but if somebody asked me, can you please transform this guy, I would just run away as fast as I could. Because I'm not a great believer in agile transformations. I believe that people can change themselves if they want to. And what you can do as a coach or a consultant is you can show them something different. And then if they are interested, maybe they will take your advice and will take your support. But it's totally impossible to change the way this person or / team organization work unless they want to. And the reason is very simple. So let's take another metaphor. I like metaphors. Let's take another metaphor. When we observe the way organization works, there are certain things that are visible. Like, like the grass that you can see there. The grass is the visible part. And Edgar Schein calls the visible parts of an organization the artifacts. Basically, the things that you can observe, touch, interact with, listen. For instance, the language people use, the way the office is set up, an office setting, processes, tools they use, technology. All this stuff is visible, and it's an artifact. Basically, it comes from something deeper, which is usually not visible, which are the paradigms by which we work. So what is a paradigm? The paradigm is a view of the world, is something we believe in. So, for instance, Bluto has a certain view of the world. Maybe Bluto thinks that having fun is more important than surviving yourself. And therefore, that's the way Bluto lives. An organization might think that putting pressure on people is the best way to get results, and so that's what they do. So it depends on the paradigms that you live by. And what I've learned recently is the more visible something is, the less powerful it is. The most powerful things are the ones that you do not see, because those are the ones that shape reality one way or another. So paradigms are so important. And if you want to change paradigms, what we need to change also is what we call leadership. Now, then again, that's an important word to understand. I've been working on this concept, in the field of agile leadership for the last 4 years. It's a topic that is very dear to me, and over time, I became less and less interested in the word leader. And I became more and more interested in the word leadership. Because the moment you start talking about leaders, a leader is a role, right? If you are a leader, it's because you have a specific role. And then if you have a role, you need to fit that role into the organization. And usually leader is associated with a specific person, certain traits of the character of a person. For instance, every time I run leadership workshops, agile leadership workshops, I usually start asking people, so what do you think a good agile leader should look like? What should this person do? And, believe me, I've asked this question to hundreds of people by now, and they always come up with something like, oh, yes, this person should be a good communicator, should be empathic, should be charismatic, should be knowledgeable, and should be enthusiastic, and also should be humble, and all this stuff. Basically, they create this picture of this wonderful human being that does not exist on Earth. Okay? Because I understand that you would like to have a leader like that, but that's not the point. The point is, how can you exercise leadership? Because leadership is something that you do. Being a leader is something that can be attached to you as a label, or maybe you pretend to be, or maybe you think you are, but leadership is more important than leader, in my opinion. So my most recent definition of leadership is that leadership is the force that brings you from here to there intentionally. If you have a deliberate intention to change something, to move from here to there, and you act in that direction, that's an act of leadership. And acts of leadership, distributed acts of leadership, in my opinion, are what makes a very smart organization. But we'll get there in a second. So, you guys still with me? Anybody snoring? Not yet? Okay. If your neighbor is snoring, please feel free to hit it, this guy. Okay. So paradigms. Let me give you an example of some paradigms that change in modern organizations. One paradigm that changed is that we moved from hierarchical organizations where people form a hierarchy, to networks of people. For instance, a team is a network of people. And if this team coordinates with another team, these are two networks coordinating through a network. And if you have three teams and so on, so on, so on, you have networks. That's one paradigm that changes. Another paradigm that changes is, for instance, purpose over profit. Now, I'm not saying that we do not need to make profit. What I'm saying is that old-styled organizations, frequently they are all about making profit for the shareholders. Most modern organizations, they see profit as a mean to a purpose. Profit is a mean to an end. So we need profit because we have a higher purpose, which is not just satisfy the shareholders. Another paradigm that is changing is directing people, is kind of the whole old way. And what we try to do these days is to empower people, to grow people and trust people and let them take responsibility and let them grow themselves and so on and so on and so on. Another paradigm is a blaming culture, as opposed to a culture where people take responsibility for what they try to do, whether or not that succeeds. Estimating and planning is being replaced by constant replanning, experimenting, and adapting. So a number of paradigms are changing in most modern organizations. All of these, the one I want to talk about in this presentation, I want to focus specifically on that one, is the concept of hierarchical or let's say vertical versus horizontal leadership. Now, if you observe, now let's see if I can use this thing properly. Yeah, maybe you should, no, not this one. This one, okay. So if you notice in vertical leadership is when you have a top-down structure. For what is a top-down structure? Is a structure where, let me try to undo this, undo that one. Okay, basically information flows up in the hierarchy. Information could be, this is what we are doing, these are the problems we have, and these are the new information that came from the field, whatever. So information goes up, and then at some management level, decisions are made, and then decisions go down into the hierarchy. It's a top-down, up-down dynamic, right? And in this kind of organizations, as you can observe, the number of connections between different roles and different people are very limited, very small. But if you move to networks of people, the number of connections is higher. So what I'm trying to say is that communication is a critical aspect in horizontal organizations. I'm not saying flat organizations. I do not believe in flat organizations. I believe that an organization can be a little more flat, a bit flatter than traditional ones, but I do not believe in totally flat organizations. Still, what I'm trying to say is that communication is critical. The way people communicate in a bidirectional way inside a network of people is critical to the success of whatever they're trying to do. So let me tell you a little story. I mentioned that I wanted to give you some storytelling as well. So this is a real company. The name is not a real one, but this is one of my clients. And this is a company that I've known for a number of years. Very, very nice company. They create excellent products. They are not an IT company. Their products are not digital products. Okay, they are physical products of some kind. However, they also have digital products to support the physical products. Okay? Therefore, they have an IT department of about 50 people, 50 people, which is not the perfect IT department, but it's not bad as well. These guys they're very skilled, they're motivated, they put a lot of effort in what they do, they believe in what they're doing. So it's a good group of people. They also have some problems, like for instance, there are a few silos. There is a little bit of interdependence between teams, usual stuff, life, okay, life. But it's a good IT department. And what they've been doing is, of course, when they started writing digital products for their users and clients, the users of their physical products and clients. But then the company had more and more success, and so they had the need to deal with communities of people, not only individual users, but communities. And then they became more successful, and so they started to interact with the global market, because now they are in like 30 different nations. And they have communities and users in all of these nations. So, and they had more digital products for that as well. And at some point, they started having strategic partners, other companies that want to do business with them in a synergic way. And so that introduced more complications as well, because they have to verticalize their products for a specific strategic partner, for instance. So it became more and more complicated. And for each of these areas, of course, there are product managers or project managers, whatever name you want to give to these guys, that basically try to interface the market, whatever that is, with the IT team. Good. As you can imagine, the IT team is a little bit under pressure, as you can imagine, because many of these requests are totally uncoordinated. They're not prioritized. It's hard to understand what should be done first. And also, because of the specific culture of this company, there's one thing that I noticed, which is interesting. In the internal cafeteria of the company, there is like a 50 inches display monitor, which shows the top sellers of the quarter. Basically, which person, either the marketing or the project manager, which person sold the most in the last quarter. And because they are achievers. That's part of the company's culture. They believe in achieving. They believe in putting effort into stuff and achieve results. That's what they believe in. But of course, that creates a little bit of competition between project managers, because I want to be the top seller, and he wants to be the top seller, and we make requests to the IT guys. So it's a mess. Okay. Basically, it's not unusual. I mean, I've seen this many times. It's quite common actually in our field, but that's the world they have. And therefore, at some point, they called me in, the IT guys, they called me in and say, help! Okay, we can't cope with this anymore. No, it's too much pressure, too much confusion. Processes are not clear, not well defined. So at that point, someone else might have suggested to just adopt one of the many scalability framework that there are now out there. You can just pick the one that you prefer. Okay, just impose an agile scalability framework on the organization. I'm not a great fan of scalability. There are some frameworks which I like, others not as much. But in general, I never think that you can take a let's say a pre-cooked solution and impose it on a very specific environment. For instance, let's say that I come to you and I say, hey, you know what? I installed an air conditioner in my living room, right over the main door, okay? Because in this way, in summer, it's much cooler and we have a good time, okay? Good. Now, the intent is good. The intent is I want to be cooler in summer, okay? And the technology is good. Probably you want to install an air conditioner, but should you, in your own house, install the air conditioner exactly in the living room above the main door? I don't think so, because every house is different. So the intent is good, the technology is good, or the solution is that one, but the actual implementation must be customized, which is why I never believe that just taking a scalability framework and impose it is a good idea. Anyway, what I observed is something that is very common in our field. I'm drinking some water. This is water, in case you are wondering. This is water. What I noticed is that they were suffering from a very common, it's called a systemic archetype. It comes from system theory. You can read the fine print if you want to, but I'm going to explain it anyway, so you might not as well. So, and I'm going to use yet another metaphor. I like metaphors. So let's say that there's a lake, okay? You have a lake, and it's a big lake. And on the border of this lake, there's a fisherman. And the fisherman goes and fish into the lake. And the fisherman notices that, okay, well, the more I fish, and the more I get fish from the lake, the more profit I make. And the more profit I make, well, I can buy more boats or can hire other people and I can fish more. So the more I fish, the more profit I make. The more profit I make, the more I can fish. Very simple, reasonable, okay? So far, so good. The more I fish, the more profit. The more profit, the more fishing. Good. What this guy doesn't know is that there's another fisherman in another part of the lake and they don't know each other. They don't know that they're fishing in the same lake. Okay? And so the other guy goes through the same thinking. The more I fish, well, the more profit. The more profit, the more I can fish. Good. What they realize at some point, however, is that what they do not know is that the total fishing from the lake, okay, is the sum of the two different fishermen, right? It's the sum of the fishing of the two fishermen. And so they also notice that after some time, at some point, they notice that there are not as many fish in the lake as there used to be. And therefore, they think, okay, now the effort it takes me to get fish out of the water has increased, so I need to put more effort into this. I need to fish more to get the same profit, okay? What they do not know, of course, first of all, at some point, they will hit the natural fishing capacity from the lake. The lake will not be able to replenish itself at some point. Okay? Fish will not be able to reproduce at the rate they're being fished. Okay, at some point. But this archetype is called the tragedy of the common, because what is the tragedy is that each fisherman, since they don't have an understanding of the whole system, they don't see the whole system. For instance, they don't know each other. They don't realize that the more they fish, the more they're actually damaging themselves. Because the more I fish, the more the other guy fishes. And the more the other guy fishes, the more I need to fish. So the more I fish, the more damage I make to myself. That's the tragedy. And if we translate this to something that is closer to what we do, we can overfish intellectual products like software features. Okay? A software feature is an intellectual product. Your users, your clients, they want features. They don't want software. They don't care about your software. Sorry, I know that you're passionate about what you do. Nobody cares about our software. Okay, they care about the features we can deliver. Okay, they care about the solutions we can provide. They don't give a damn about the code you write. Okay, if they could have the solution, the feature, without any programmer involved, they would be very much happier. Okay. Sorry, that's the way it is. That's what they buy from us. They buy features, okay? So how can you overfish intellectual features, intellectual products from a development team? Putting psychological pressure on these people. Like if you are a project manager or a product manager, you go to your guys and you say, okay, you know, this is more urgent than anything else, okay? This feature is more urgent than the other guy's features, for instance. Or our key partners, our strategic partners, they want this right now. Or this is a most wonderful business opportunity we have ever seen. We cannot miss this opportunity. Put psychological pressure on these people. Or I committed to your deadline, okay? Which is another classic. And then there's the classic of all classics, which is this is what the CIO wants or the CEO wants. That's the classic. Or it could be the CEO, CIO, or any other demigod that has power of life and death over you. Okay? So that's what this guy wants. Okay. Now, then again, you might say, if we go back to our example with ActiLife, the company, my client, you could say, yes, but they should know, I mean, the different project managers, they know each other. They should understand that but they're involved in this tragedy of the commons, so the more pressure they put on the team, the less quality they get, the more complicated it gets to deliver. They should know that. Yes, they do. And they just don't want to see that. Because what is much more important is the top seller. That's the message that they get from the company's culture. The company's culture is telling them, sell, deliver, make profit, which is a very normal dynamic in IT. It's perfectly normal that the business side of the company, they are asking you for more, give me more, I want more, we want to sell more, we have more opportunities, give me more. And usually technical people, they say, oh, slow down, okay, take it easy, relax, we need to do this properly, we need time, okay, slow, fast, slow. It's normal. And it's also a very good thing as far as these people understand each other. When they don't want to see each other, they don't want to see each other's needs, then it becomes more complicated. Now, I also mentioned that I wanted to talk a little bit of philosophy, not too much philosophy, but just a little bit of philosophy. Okay, so I'd like to introduce a concept which is a bit old in general, not only old for IT, is a bit old in general because it is 2,500 years old. Okay, it's a Buddhist concept. Okay, it's called avijja. Now, vijja, the word vijja is a Pali word. Pali. Now, vijja means clear understanding, clear knowledge, to be more precise. It means vijja is when you clearly understand something because you had direct experience of that something, and you investigated something, and you made an effort to understand, and you practiced, and you explored. It's not theoretical knowledge, or just knowing that there is another project manager. Okay, it's called clear knowledge. Clear knowledge comes from experiencing, investigating, and so on. Avijja is the lack of clear knowledge. Okay? And in fact, usually the word avijja is translated in English into ignorance. Okay? But it's not a generic ignorance. It's a very specific kind of ignorance. It's basically it's not being able to see things for what they really are. Not being able to see things for what they really are. To see, to understand, to experience things for what they really are. And by the way, this is a human condition. Okay. Because of our physiology, our cognition, and the way the brain works, nobody sees things as they really are. Okay. Even something very simple as color. I mean, this color for me is orange, and for this guy there, I mean, this could be like pinkish. Okay, because of physiology. And also we all interpret, we attach meaning to things, we interpret things in our own personal way, according to our own personal filter. So nobody sees the world as it really is. However, we can make an effort to improve, and that's my point. We can make an effort to improve. It doesn't mean that we need to stay ignorant. We may at least try and get better. So the way avijja connects to this talk is because it connects to the avijja in which the project managers in active life used to live. They didn't want to see the systemic dynamics. They were not able to see the systemic dynamics because of the pressure of the culture of the company, and also it was more convenient to look at something else. Okay. And this connects to trying to change this environment, change this system, which connects to Bluetooth and how hard it is to try to change someone who doesn't want to change. So this is the logical structure of what I've been presenting so far. There is one thing that we can do, that each of us can do, is cheap, is basically free of charge, okay? Just takes a little bit of effort, and it's called listening. Now, listening, first of all, we need to clarify what we mean by the word listening in this context. Now, listening, first of all, is a fundamental leadership skill. If you are interested in leadership, if you are interested in being able to exercise leadership around you in an effective way, in a good way, listening is a fundamental skill that you should have, that all of us should have. Also, it's the most underrated leadership skills. Usually our culture sees the leaders as, then again, somebody very charismatic or active or whatever. Yes, all of that. And leadership is a fundamental, and listening is a fundamental leadership skill as well. And it's so important because by listening, you change your perception. And by changing your perception, you change the way you interact with the world. And therefore, you change the world around you only by listening in a certain way. Okay. Which way? I'm going to explain. By the way, these few concepts I'm going to present, they come from a theory called Theory U by Otto Scharmer. Admittedly, the naming, the wording, sometimes is confusing. That's the way it is. But I'll try to make it simple and clear for everybody. So when we listen, there is a first stage, which is called downloading. Downloading is when you hear something or someone talking to you, but you are not really listening. You are more or less listening to your internal voice. And this is so common. I've seen this millions of times in organizations. Oh, that's another characteristic, in fact, of active life. I've been sitting in their meetings, and in their meetings it's very common to have people talking and constantly being interrupted by other people in the meeting. Okay, constant interruptions. And that's a typical example of downloading, is when you listen to someone and you're already jumping to conclusions before the other guy has finished what they were trying to explain to you. You already jump to conclusions. You're already trying to make up your mind. You prepare your answer, and you just put your answer on the table without even listening. That's an example of downloading. You hear, but you don't listen. You just listen to yourself, in fact. Okay. There's a better level, which is called factual listening, which is when at least you accept that the person is providing you with information, and you at least pay attention to the information. And maybe later you will make up your mind about what information means, but at least for some time you just take in the information. You just listen to the facts, okay, with no judgmental attitude, or without jumping to conclusions, or without, you just listen to the facts. There's another level of listening, which is called what we call empathic listening, which is not only you listen to the facts that the other person is expressing, but you also try to put yourself in the shoes of the other person. So why is this other person, what are the needs of this person? Why is conversation happening from the other side's perspective? Not from my side, from the other side, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And then there's another form of listening, another level, which is called generative listening, which is you listen in a way that tries to create a better situation for everyone. Okay? For all of these different stages, there are things, attitudes that will block you or will support you. And I'm going to explain this in a very simple way. Now, in terms of factual listening, the thing that will probably prevent you from taking in the facts is what we call the voice of criticism, judgment. Okay? It means that whatever the other person is telling you, you're already judging it. Now, by judging, I mean you think that your idea, your position is either superior, equal, or inferior to the other one. Okay? The moment you start comparing, okay, you are already judging. What helps you is this thing called curiosity. Okay? It's a very, very simple thing to do. Okay, let's listen to this guy, and okay, I'm curious. Honestly curious. Okay, is this information interesting? There's something new that I don't know. Why is this information coming to me? Where did the information come from? Okay, curiosity. Okay, open mind. Okay, just tell me. I'd like to know. I'd like to understand. Okay, that's one thing. In terms of empathic listening, the things that are going to prevent you is what we call the voice of cynicism. Cynicism is when you try to put emotional distance from somebody else. Okay. Basically, you don't want to get involved in the kind of pain, suffering, or whatever that the other person is. It could be something very simple. It could be your colleague coming to you because you constantly, every time, because your build constantly breaks on Friday afternoon. Okay, your build constantly breaks at 2 p.m. on Friday afternoon. Okay. And you could be cynical and say, okay, no, that's your problem, mate. I don't care. Okay, or maybe because you're so lazy and you don't write your tests, whatever. Be cynical. Okay, talk to the hand. I don't want to get involved, or try to see that situation from the other person's perspective. Okay, try to put in, as I said, in their shoes. And okay, I understand. You want to go home, it's Friday, and this has been happening for like the last 3 weekends, and you're tired. Okay, let's see what we can do. Okay, that's a different approach if you listen this way. And generative listening is basically the ability to listen and to generate solutions and idea. And there's one thing that will prevent you from generate something new, and it's fear. Okay? Because by definition, something new creates discomfort in our brain. that's the way we work. Okay, we are very. I mean, we're very status quo animals. Okay, we like repetition. We like, in terms of survival. Okay, I'm not talking intellectually, but at a very basic level, from the survival point of view, everything new is scary. From the survival point of view. Okay, so there is always some discomfort when you try something new. There might also be some excitement. I like to try new things, but if I observe myself, if I pay attention to myself, I cannot deny that there is some excitement and there's also some concern because it's something new. It's never something relaxed when I try something new. Okay, there is the component of so what will happen now? Even if I take, a new corner here in Prague, and I like to walk downtown here. It's such a beautiful city, and I like to walk around and explore new things. But every time I take a new turn or I go into a strange and interesting alley, I say, okay, well, that's so interesting, but am I in the right place? That's normal. That's part of how we work. Our brain works. So what helps you to generate new things is what we call courage. Very simple thing. Be courageous. And there's a specific type of courage that it's involved in this discussion, and it's the courage to let go, which is another leadership trait. Remember, I mentioned that leadership is what brings you intentionally from here to there. The new comes from an act of leadership. Management usually is more about safety. Managers are much more concerned about safety. Are we following the regulations? Are we on time, on budget? Are we making our customer happy? Is everything safe? Management is about safety. Management not managers, not individual person, but the activity of management doesn't like new. In fact, whatever is new in management, we call risk management. We need to manage the risk that something will go not as we expect. Okay? We need to manage new because new is scary from the management point of view. But leadership is all about creating something new. That's what leaders do. They create a new world. Something very small. Maybe you help your friend writing a better class, I don't know. Or you are Nelson Mandela and you create something new. But leadership is all about creating something new. Okay? And to be able to create something new, you need to have the courage to let go of the old. If you do not let go of the old, you cannot create the new. And that's an act of leadership. Letting go of the old and go towards the new is an act of leadership. And in horizontal organizations, what I love to see is when people, they feel safe to create something new, something better, every single minute they work together. That's what makes great teams great. The fact that they are able together to manifest acts of leadership that improve whatever they are doing, their product, their working environment, their collaboration, their knowledge. That's what I like to see. This creating something new. So if you're able to do that, the effect of listening in a certain way. So then again, an important part of this is the ability to listen in a certain way. Because then again, you cannot change Bluto. I cannot change this guy, okay? I can try, and it will be painful for me and for him, okay? I cannot change this guy. But what I can change is the way I listen to this person. And by changing the interaction, maybe the other person will change as well. Maybe, okay? That's what I can do. I can change myself. I cannot change other people. So if you're able to do that, the effects of listening in a certain way are interesting because, first of all, you develop more self-awareness. If you start to interact with other people and from time to time you ask yourself the question, am I being curious? Am I being empathic? Am I being courageous in this interaction? Okay, then you become more self-aware, aware of yourself. You also create, and that creates self-leadership. The more aware you are of yourself, a better leader of yourself you can be. I always tell people, you cannot lead others if you cannot lead yourself in the first place. You need to lead yourself in the first place, and then maybe you can be a leader for someone else. In a perfect world. And there are other interesting effects, which is we create what we call dialogue. If this happens in the entire network of people, could be a team of 5 people, I don't care, okay, like in that picture, you create what we call system awareness. The system starts listening to itself. People start really listening to each other. They really start, they have this bidirectional communication I was referring to. And this enables horizontal leadership. So, for instance, something that you hear saying when people talk about self-organizing teams, for instance, they say, oh, yes, everybody's a leader. Yes, but I think that that's a dangerous sentence, and the danger is it gets misunderstood. I prefer, in a self-organizing team, the system is able to lead itself. That's what I prefer. Nobody is the leader as a role, for instance, but everybody can perform acts of leadership. And by everybody performing acts of leadership, the system leads itself. It's a kind of an interesting twist. So, 7 minutes and 46 seconds. Okay, let's move on. Are you guys still with me? Yahoo! Surprising. Okay. You're so brave, you know. After lunch in a dark room, you know, with comfortable chairs, so brave. It's also warm in here, right? Isn't it? Okay, good. Okay, we'll be done in 7 minutes and 19 seconds. Okay. So I mentioned that. There are artifacts, things that you can see in organizations and paradigms. Okay. I also mentioned that you can listen in a certain way. And as you can imagine, the deeper you go, the more you go towards the paradigms, the deeper you listen at the same time. So downloading is something very observable, but generative listening is something that is very deep, very deep into the persons. Now, I have a couple of bad news for you. I don't know if you care about Agile at all, but if you do, Agile will help you up to a certain point. For instance, in Agile, we say that we run retrospectives. That means that from time to time, okay, we stop coding and we get together and we discuss how we're working. Okay, that's basically what a retrospective is, with the intent of improving the way we work, okay, or the product sometimes. Good. So factual listening, we do in retrospectives, but I've never seen teams that deliberately go to the empathic and generative level in retrospectives. It's very uncommon because it's not part of the Agile framework. The Agile framework just says that the team stops, get together, and they discuss ways to improve their process or the product. Okay, or the environment. It's very vague, of course, and so a lot is left to you, but still. But my point is that if you forget about the other parts, if you forget about the deeper parts of these interactions, then it's very unlikely that your agility will flourish. It will probably remain at the process level. So probably you'll be doing sprints, and you'll be doing retrospectives, and you'll be doing stand-ups, but you're not really improving the mindset and the culture in the organization. Probably, or maybe not. So, for instance, sometimes anybody does Scrum here. Any certified Scrum Master? I'm one, so just confess. Okay. We have a few certified Scrum Masters. Does anybody remember the 5 values of Scrum altogether? Okay, I forget them all the time, but since I prepared for this talk, okay, I can tell you that they are focus, commitment, openness, respect, and courage. Okay, these are the 5 values of Scrum. Focus, commitment, okay, makes sense. Okay, openness, which is all about communication. Respect, which is all about communication, and courage. Okay, and these are 5 values that should be in place all together, whatever you do. So if you really want to do Scrum, you should be focused, committed, open, respectful, and courageous all the time in every single thing that you do. Okay? But people forget about that. They say, okay, well, Scrum is about, sprints and backlogs and stuff and charts and blah, blah, blah. Even if you do XP, okay, extreme programming, which is more specific to software development. In extreme programming, you have simplicity, feedback, communication, respect, and courage. And these are the 5 values of extreme programming. So what I'm saying is that the Agile approach has embedded into its own culture the concept of communication, respect, and courage, is embedded into the culture of what we do. Unfortunately, we forget most of the time, especially large companies. They are all about processes and stuff. So that's why I think that's so important. So that was the first bad news, okay? We forget about these values. The other bad news is simpler. And by the way, this is just my impression. I did not run any benchmark, okay? So I don't have factual data. But from what I have seen working with companies for the last 10 years, I would say that roughly 95% of the companies that are asking for Agile coaching, what they really want is consultancy, which is exactly what ActiLife did when they called me in. Remember when the IT department called, help, okay, come in, fix us. Okay, give us the solution. But fixing stuff is something that you can do with a broken car. You cannot fix people. Okay, consultancy is about you have a problem, you ask for my opinion, and I give you a possible solution. That's consultancy. Coaching is about I help you to develop your potential. That's coaching. It's a different thing. But 95% of companies that ask for Agile coaching, in fact, they want someone that fixes them. And you can do that only up to the point where you don't touch the existing power structures. Okay? Yes, change us, but don't touch the privileges. Okay? Don't touch the power structures. So change us, but do not change us, basically. That's the message. And as an effect, because this is the message that comes from the market, 95% of so-called Agile coaches are consultants, meaning that they respond to this request from the market. They have companies that call them in and say, oh, fix us. Oh, sure, I will teach you Scrum. Okay. Are you also changing people, or are you also helping people to change themselves? Develop their potential. And it's all well meant. I'm not criticizing, okay? I'm not judging, I'm not criticizing, I'm just observing. Because we are in such a difficult and critical cultural transformation in our society about this stuff that, I understand the difficulty that people have, both companies and individuals. But anyway, what happens is that people go into companies and say, yes, I will fix you, but you cannot fix Bluetooth. I'm sorry, you cannot change Bluetooth. I told you. So where can you start from? You can start from, if you want to do something practical, now that I've talked about all this beautiful stuff, what can you do in practice? Practical advice. Well, one thing that you can do is you start paying attention to the way you listen. That's one thing. Okay. The other thing is, if you want to practice the way you listen, you can find a buddy, maybe a colleague, maybe a friend, maybe a lover. I don't know. What's important is that you have someone you can practice with, someone you can, a buddy, a sparring partner. Okay. Let's get better together at listening to each other. The other thing you can do is be an example to others. For instance, on the workplace, and maybe one day you'll have someone coming to you and say, Bob, it's a pleasure talking to you. And you might think, yeah, it's because I'm listening to you. Okay, it's because I'm really listening to you. That's why you like it so much. Okay, and if you want, and for serious stuff like organizational stuff, or if you want to get serious, find a good coach, and they will help you. So, wrapping up, because I'm 42 seconds late, what I try to tell you is that only by developing your curiosity, your empathy, and your courage, you can listen in a better way. If you listen in a better way, in that specific way, you have two effects. Number one, you improve your clear knowledge. You reduce avidya, you improve clear knowledge. Number two, you create more awareness and dialogue in your system, in your human system. If you provide clear knowledge, you can create new paradigms. The more you understand the reality, the more you can change reality. If you improve dialogue and awareness, you create more horizontal leadership. And creating horizontal leadership, okay, is one of the paradigms that you want to change. So yes, it is a systemic thing. It's not a cause and effect. It's a systemic approach. And now I'm really done. And I'll be around if you want to have a chat or ask me questions, whatever. If you want to keep in touch after I leave Prague, please connect on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and use these courtesy URLs if you want to. And I'm done. Thank you very much. Thank you.